Americans are taught that happiness often comes from working hard, earning more, and being the best. So why are some of the coldest, darkest, loneliest, highest tax countries in the world the happiest? I had some hesitations before moving to the Netherlands. Compared to California, salaries were lower, taxes higher, the weather worse. But I had always heard that the happiest countries in the world were in Europe. Eventually, I did move to the Netherlands. And despite higher taxes, crappy weather, I felt happier. So in this video, we'll explore what does happiness actually mean. I'll share what I've learned about happiness after living in the Netherlands and the US. I'll also talk about why I believe Europeans are happier than Americans that the data doesn't show. Things like cultural differences, actual freedom, urban design, nutrition, fitness, and more. And then we might just conclude that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness might actually be found in Europe. So every year you may have seen these lists, the happiest countries in the world. And every year it's usually the same Northern European countries. And America, number 23. But they're not actually measuring happiness, the emotion. What they're actually measuring is quality of life. And it's based off of one question. On a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the best possible life for you, 0 being the worst, where are you? Happiness researchers say that the results are influenced by these 6 factors. And of course, things in your personal life matter too. But let's start with money. GDP per capita is a way of measuring how rich a country is. But it doesn't necessarily measure standard of living, especially when there's a lot of inequality. The US has one of the highest GDP per capita, but it also has one of the highest poverty and inequality rates in the developed world, even higher than many countries in Africa and Latin America. But in many Northern European countries, they have some of the lowest inequality rates in the world. And this plays a big role in people's happiness, because think about the happiness equation. One can think of happiness as the gap between reality and expectation. And Americans, we're taught to dream big. Now, I love this mentality, but it can also condition us to expect a lot. But you can't just be average. You have to be great. Because Sally just got into Harvard, Eric just became a millionaire, and everyone seems to be showing off. And then there's my reality. And that best possible life seems further and further out of reach. And American culture really is about more.
Money.
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 Money to be rich.
$1 million.
$1 $1,000,000,000.
$100.
Billions and billions of dollars.
And even if you have a lot, you may feel like you need even more. Now, I've worked in Silicon Valley and Hollywood, and you could say people there are already super successful. But maybe that's also why the comparison game is even bigger. You can always have more stock options, more salary, more status. In a Harvard study on inequality and happiness between Europeans and Americans, Americans believe their society is mobile, so the poor feel they can move up, and the rich fear falling behind. That's the paradox of the American dream. It motivates people to aim higher, but it can also trap them in endless striving and comparison. Now, the Buddha has been saying this for thousands of years. The constant chase for more leads to suffering and unhappiness. But in the Nordic countries and the Netherlands, people there seem a lot more content. I mean, they complain about first world problems, but you don't see a big inequality gap there. Because the system supports the majority, not just the top 10, 20%. And in many European countries, people usually can't make as much money as in the US. But they don't really need to. And if they do, they get taxed more. But those taxes help support society. And in Scandinavia, there's the law of Jont, a cultural idea that says, stay humble, don't brag, and don't act like you're better than others. And the Dutch have a similar mindset. Do normal, or just act normal, don't brag. And when you don't see as much inequality and people showing off, you are more content and happier. This is something the data doesn't show, but in my opinion, plays a huge role in people's happiness. But then that also doesn't explain Costa Rica. Costa Rica isn't a rich country, and there's also a lot of inequality. But yet, Costa Ricans still feel very free to choose what to do in their lives. When it comes to freedom, Costa Rica comes in at number 3, and the US, 104. While freedom has been increasing in all parts of the world, in the US, it's actually fallen. But I also get why most Americans don't feel very free, because most Americans are actually living paycheck to paycheck. And with cost of living rising, debt, housing, healthcare, education costs rising, how can you have freedom to choose what to do in your life? And even if you do have money, economic freedom doesn't always guarantee mental, lifestyle, and time freedom. Costa Rica isn't a rich country, but what they do have is a strong welfare system, universal healthcare, free education, state pension, and civil and political freedoms too. And this describes Europe too. And in many of these countries, people also feel freer to make their own life choices. So maybe that's the link. More support creates more freedom, which leads to more happiness. When I lived in the Netherlands, yes, cost of living is also really high and rising, but I felt freer than I did in the US. And that's because of social safety nets. For example, when I got laid off in Amsterdam, it sucked, but I still felt some sense of stability because I got a severance package. I got unemployment benefits from the government, and healthcare was affordable. This is how I've learned to think about safety nets. They calm your nervous system, and when you feel less stressed, you feel more secure and free to choose what to do in your life, even if bad things happen. Or, in simple terms, when you don't have to pay a lot of money for healthcare and education, that makes life a lot simpler. At the same time, Europeans also get a lot of time freedom. Europeans get and take their 5-6 weeks of vacation. They get a lot more parental and sick leave, and they work less than the average American. In Europe, you do pay a lot of taxes, but you also pay for the feeling of freedom. And if you want more time freedom, AI is going to save you a lot of time. And I just found a new creative partner, Luma Uni 1. While most AI models create basic charts, Uni 1 takes the time to understand what you really want and then creates a professional image or chart. Let me show you how I use it. I want to create an infographic of the 10 least corrupt countries, make it colorful, and in just a few seconds, beautiful. Now I want to create thumbnails or images to use in the video. I can't travel to the happiest country in the world, but I can use my face. Put this man in Finland. He looks lonely. Alone, but not lonely. Okay, let's make it even more Finnish. Put this man in a Finnish sauna. Alone, but happy. So if you want to try Luma for yourself, I'll leave a link below. People in Europe also often feel more physically safe, the freedom to walk alone at night and not fear for your safety. Freedom isn't only about nobody's gonna stop me from saying or doing something that I want. It's also about I have enough support, safety, security, and time to choose to do what I want to do in my life. And when you have more time, stability, security, and safety, you also live longer. Now, there are many factors that contribute towards a long or short life, like what you eat, how much you move, and how stressed you are. And they're not only shaped by your behaviors, but also your environment. Now, people are free to choose what they want to eat, but when 40% of the country looks like this, something has to be wrong. Now, I'm not trying to shame people, but I am trying to shame the system. The system in America isn't designed to make people healthy. It's designed to make money. Now, whenever I return to the US from the Netherlands for a vacation for 1, 2, 3 weeks, I would always gain weight, at least 3 kilos, 7-ish pounds. But I always knew when I returned to the Netherlands, I would lose it all. And I usually did within a month, which got me questioning what's going on. And then I realized it's the food. The US food system designs food that is super tasty, super convenient, and super affordable. But the problem is, it's also super ultra processed. Americans eat a lot more ultra processed foods than Europeans do. More sugar, more bad fats, more fast food. Now, it's not just the culture, but it's also the system, because in Europe, they do have more regulations against the bad stuff. And it's not just what we eat, but it's also how we move. When I lived in the Netherlands, everyone cycles. I mean, the whole country is designed in a way where bike paths are connected to everything. So movement is built into the system, which makes exercise really easy. That's also true in countries with the highest life expectancies. People are more active, people walk more. And many European cities and towns are very walkable. And you know what else can help you live longer? Finding a career that uses your strengths, spending more time with the people you love, and building a life that feels aligned. That's the kind of change I help people make as a leadership coach. I've worked across Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and Europe, and I've helped hundreds of people make meaningful changes, whether that's stepping into a bigger role or changing directions in life or career. So if you're ready for a change, let's connect and let's get back to happiness. And in many Asian countries, many people go out in the daytime and also the evening time to these dirt places, to restaurants, cafes, and parks. The problem in America is that we sit in our cars every day. The problem is also the country is really big, everything is spread out. So it's really hard for us to go out and to connect with people halfway across the city. Because social connection is very important when it comes to life expectancy and happiness. Now, if you look up happiness in the dictionary, you might actually find Costa Rica. Gallup calls this positive emotions. And Costa Rica comes in at number 5. Actually, most of the top countries in the positive emotions category are Latin American cultures. And according to happiness researchers, one big reason why Costa Rica has risen to the top is because they have strong communities and strong connections. Which isn't all that surprising, but I was surprised that Nordic countries are actually at the top of the social support rankings. Because on the outside, it can look very lonely, but quantity isn't quality. Because social support is really about having friends and family there for you when it matters. And while they may not be as joyous as the Costa Ricans or the Latins, they do have strong, stable relationships. Research also finds that at the end of life, the most important thing that predicts a meaningful life is quality relationships. Now, this is even more important today because of the rise of social media, the rise of loneliness. But can we do something about this? Actually, some countries are, like Australia, Indonesia, many European countries are thinking of banning social media for children. But that also depends. Do you trust the government to do what's best for the people? Because corruption also shapes our happiness. So it's also no surprise that the least corrupt countries in the world are also among the happiest. In many of the happiest countries, they trust the government. And when people trust the government, they feel safer, more supported, and less stressed. But today in America, many Americans believe that CEOs, healthcare and media executives, the government, are corrupt. I mean, when you see health insurance companies deny claims leading to people dying, there's something wrong. But unfortunately, in many parts of the world, corruption is still a big problem, and it's something that many people have no control over. But one thing that we can control is giving or generosity. Because research does show that when we give to others, we are happier. And generosity isn't only about money, it can be your time, your care, your service to others. And if you look at the most generous countries, they're also not the wealthiest countries, too. It doesn't require a lot of money for you to be generous. But there are also issues with these rankings because different cultures can answer this one question very differently. For example, Asian cultures tend to be more modest, more humble. We usually don't give extreme ratings. Also, the idea of a best possible life can differ culture to culture. Some cultures may think about wealth and power, and some cultures may think about family, stability, harmony. But what may be an even more interesting comparison is seeing the changes of a country or a group over time. North America has seen some of the biggest drops in happiness. The US has fallen from 11th happiest to 23rd, and Canada fell from number 5 to 25. Researchers say the US and Canada have dropped because young people are doing worse. Cost of living is rising, trust falling, and social media may be making everything worse. What do you think? However, the good news is, most of the world is actually happier today compared to 15 years ago. And the biggest winners are Central and Eastern Europe. So, what about the weather? Well, the research is clear. The weather only has a tiny impact with how satisfied you are with life. What makes the Finns, the Dutch, and many Europeans happy definitely isn't the weather. But it's the fact that they don't have to worry about healthcare. Kids can afford to go to college. They mostly trust the government. And there isn't a culture of more, and more. So, are you happy? It's a question that I've asked myself a lot over the past decade, and paradoxically, the research also tells us that the chase for happiness may actually lead us to become more unhappy. Perhaps the Buddha was right that attachment and this chase for happiness may actually lead us to become more unhappy. But I do believe there's a healthy balance. But this endless more, and more mindset is a big killer of happiness. I've also learned how a country is designed, from urban planning to public policy, has a huge impact on society's happiness. And while I still don't love high taxes, I can understand now, and I can see how taxes can contribute to the well being and happiness of society. And lastly, I've spent a lot of time in the US, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and I've met happy people everywhere. Perhaps the secret to happiness is to be present and to be grateful for what we have, for the people that we have. And I still believe in dreams. But I've also learned that if that dream doesn't come true, that's okay as well. So, are you happy? What does happiness mean for you? Tell me in the comments below, and I wish you lots of happiness, whatever that means to you. Take care.